5 years.
Oh my God, you will
5
not
years of
believe what
lifting,
happened next.
washing, feeding,
That's
and losing
hilarious.
myself one piece at a time. And then I heard her laugh on the phone and say those words that shattered everything. "He's basically my free servant now." I was standing in our kitchen, holding the plate of cut-up strawberries she'd asked for when her voice drifted through the bedroom door. My hands started shaking, not from weakness, though God knows I was tired, but from something deeper, something that felt like dying from the inside out. You know that moment when you realize you've been living a lie? When everything you thought was love turns out to be something else entirely? Sarah had been paralyzed from the waist down after a drunk driver hit her car 3 months before our wedding. I remembered the doctor's words, "She'll need extensive care for the rest of her life." I didn't hesitate. I married her anyway. I promised to love her in sickness and in health, didn't I? But standing there with those strawberries, listening to her giggle about how well-trained I was, I felt something crack inside my chest. "He does everything," she was saying to whoever was on the other end. "Cooking, cleaning, bathing me. It's like having a full-time nurse, but I don't have to pay him. He's too guilty to leave." The plate slipped from my hands. Strawberries scattered across the linoleum like drops of blood. The crash echoed through the house, and her conversation stopped. "David, you okay out there?" I couldn't answer. My throat felt like it was closing up. 5 years of getting up at 2 a.m. to help her to the bathroom. 5 years of quitting my job to be her caregiver. 5 years of pretending I didn't miss the man I used to be. "David!" "Coming," I managed to croak. I knelt down and started picking up strawberries, each one a small reminder of how far I'd fallen. When did I become this person? When did I stop being her husband and become her servant? If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, hit that like button, because this story is about to show you what happens when invisible becomes powerful. The pattern broke that Tuesday morning when I walked into our bedroom and found her sitting up in bed, fully dressed, putting on makeup. Sarah hadn't done her own makeup in 5 years. I'd been doing it for her every morning when she asked, which wasn't often since she rarely left the house. "You're up early," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't look at me, just kept applying lipstick with steady hands. "I have physical therapy today." "Physical therapy? Since when? Dr. Martinez said..." "I found a new therapist. Someone who actually believes in recovery." Recovery. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. For 5 years, I'd been told her condition was permanent, irreversible. That's why I'd rearranged my entire life around her, wasn't it? I watched her wheel herself to the dresser and start brushing her hair. Movements that looked practiced, natural, not like someone who'd been helpless for 5 years. "How long have you been going to therapy?" I asked. "A few months." She still wouldn't look at me. "I wanted to surprise you." A surprise? Like the surprise of hearing her call me her free servant? Like the surprise of realizing she'd been lying to me about something this big? I felt the walls of our bedroom closing in. The same walls where I'd spent countless nights listening to her cry about her limitations, where I'd held her while she grieved the life she'd lost, where I promised her over and over that we'd get through this together. But we hadn't been getting through anything together, had we? I'd been getting through it, alone, while she, what? Planned her recovery in secret? "I need some air." "David, wait!" I closed the door on her voice and walked outside. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of Mrs. Chen's jasmine from next door. I sat on our porch steps and tried to make sense of what I'd just seen. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "Still coming to Emma's graduation next week? It's been 5 years since we've seen you." 5 years. That's how long it had been since I'd seen my own niece. How long since I'd had a conversation with another adult that didn't revolve around medication schedules and doctor's appointments. How long since I'd felt like David instead of just the caregiver. I looked back at our house, at the ramp I'd built, at the modified van in the driveway, at the life I'd constructed around Sarah's needs. But what if those needs weren't as absolute as I'd been led to believe? When I came back inside, Sarah was on the phone again. This time, she saw me and quickly hung up. "Who was that?" I asked. "Nobody, just scheduling appointments." More lies. I could feel them piling up between us like a wall. But for the first time in 5 years, I didn't try to tear down the wall. Instead, I did something I had never done before. I started paying attention. Over the next week, I watched. Really watched. I noticed how Sarah's muscle spasms always seemed to happen when I was about to leave the house. How she could never quite reach things that were just slightly out of her way, but somehow managed to get them when she thought I wasn't looking. I started finding receipts. Gas station purchases on days when she was supposedly too weak to leave the house. Restaurant charges for meals she'd never mentioned. Phone bills showing hundreds of calls to numbers I didn't recognize. But it was the credit card statement that broke me. 3 months of charges to a gym across town. Not just any gym, a specialized rehabilitation center. The same one where I'd begged her to try therapy 2 years ago and she'd refused, saying she wasn't ready to face the reality of her limitations. Except she had been going. For 3 months. Without telling me. I sat in my car outside that gym for 2 hours, staring at the building, trying to understand. Then I saw her, Sarah, my wife, walking out of the building on her own 2 legs, talking and laughing with a man I'd never seen before. Walking! If your heart is racing right now, make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about betrayal. I didn't confront her that day, or the next. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I made a plan for myself. I called my old boss. The position I'd left was gone, but there was something else. Something that would require me to travel, to be away from home for weeks at a time. Something that would make me unavailable to be anyone's servant. I called my sister and told her I'd be at Emma's graduation. I booked a hotel room. I bought a suit that wasn't 2 sizes too big from years of stress eating and sleepless nights. And then I waited. It was a Thursday when I finally heard the whole truth. Sarah was on the phone again, but this time she was in the living room thinking I was at the grocery store. I'd come back from my wallet and heard her voice through the window. "The physical therapy is working faster than we expected. I should be able to walk normally within a few months. But I'm not telling him yet. This setup is too perfect." I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering. "I know it sounds terrible, but David's so guilty about everything. He'll do anything to make up for wanting to leave me after the accident. And honestly, I like being taken care of. I like not having to work, not having to worry about anything. He's so desperate to prove he's a good husband that he'll never question it." There it was. The truth I'd been too afraid to see. She'd been walking for months, maybe longer. She'd been lying to me, using my guilt and love as weapons to keep me trapped. The best part is, he actually believes he's helping me. God, men are so stupid sometimes. I just have to act helpless and he comes running. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. 5 years of my life. 5 years of believing I was doing the right thing, the noble thing. 5 years of sacrificing everything I was for someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient fool. But you know what? In that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't angry. I was free. I walked into that room and stood in the doorway until she noticed me. The look on her face when she saw me was worth every sleepless night, every sacrificed dream, every moment of feeling small and invisible. "I have to go," she said quickly into the phone, and hung up. We looked at each other across the room, 5 years of lies hanging between us like smoke. How long? I asked. David, I can explain. How long have you been able to walk? She looked down at her hands. 18 months. 18 months. A year and a half of my life stolen by someone who's supposed to love me. Someone I'd rearranged my entire existence to protect. I was scared, she said, finally looking up at me. Scared that if you knew I was getting better, you'd leave. Scared that without needing you, I'd lose you. So you decided to lie to me instead, to keep me trapped. I never meant for it to go this far. At first, I really did need your help. But then it became easier, and you seemed so happy to be needed. Happy? I almost laughed. I'd been dying inside for 5 years, and she thought I was happy. I've been carrying groceries for someone who can walk. I've been bathing someone who's been driving herself to the gym. I've been feeding someone who's been eating restaurant meals behind my back. David, please. No. The word came out harder than I intended. I'm done. I turned and walked to our bedroom, started packing. My clothes, my books, the few things that were still mine. It didn't take long. I'd been living so small for so long that everything I owned fit in 2 suitcases. Sarah wheeled herself to the doorway. Still pretending, still lying. Where will you go? She asked. I don't know. I zipped up the second suitcase, but for the first time in 5 years, that feels like freedom instead of fear. You can't just leave me. I turned to look at her. Really look at her. You left me 3 years ago. You left me the first time you chose to lie instead of trust me. You left me every time you called me your servant instead of my husband. I never called you. I heard you, Sarah. I heard you laughing about how well-trained I was, how I was too guilty to leave, how I was basically your free servant. Her face went white. You weren't supposed to hear that. But I did. And now I'm supposed to do what? Pretend I didn't? Go back to being your servant because you're scared of being alone? I picked up my suitcases and walked toward the door. She didn't follow me. Didn't even try to get out of the wheelchair. If you've ever had to choose between what's comfortable and what's right, you know exactly why this next part will give you chills. I stopped at the front door and turned back. You know what's funny? I would have celebrated your recovery. I would have been so happy to see you walking again. I would have supported you through every step of rebuilding your life. I paused, looking at the house we'd shared, the life we'd built on lies. You didn't trust me enough to let me be happy for you. You saw me as someone to be managed, not loved. And that's the real tragedy here, Sarah. Not your accident, not your recovery, but the fact that you threw away something real because you were too scared to trust it. I walked out and didn't look back. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Denver, working on a project that excited me for the first time in years. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I'm sorry. I know it's too late, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but out of something deeper. Understanding, maybe. Or just the knowledge that some doors, once closed, are meant to stay that way. The woman at the table next to me was struggling with her laptop, muttering about a presentation that wouldn't load. Without thinking, I leaned over and offered to help. She looked up with grateful eyes and said, "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done." As I fixed her computer, I realized something beautiful. I was still the same person who wanted to help, who wanted to care for people, who wanted to make a difference. But now I was choosing who to help, and they were choosing to let me help them. It was partnership, not servitude. That night I called my sister. We talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. about Emma's graduation, about my new job, about the life I was building for myself. "I'm proud of you," she said before we hung up. "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "But you know what? I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful." "Grateful?" "Yeah, because I learned something important. Love isn't about making yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. It's about growing together, supporting each other's growth, celebrating each other's victories." I looked out my apartment window at the city lights, at all the possibilities stretching out before me. I spent 5 years thinking I was being noble, but I was really just being afraid. Afraid to demand more, afraid to expect better, afraid to believe I deserved a love that didn't require me to disappear. If this story changed how you think about love, sacrifice, and self-worth, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message, because the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself. The truth is, I did serve someone for 5 years, but it wasn't Sarah. It was fear. I served fear, guilt, and the belief that I wasn't worth more than scraps of affection disguised as need. Now, I serve something else. The belief that real love multiplies you, it doesn't divide you. That the right person will celebrate your growth, not fear it. That choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's the only way to have a self worth sharing. Sarah taught me what love isn't, and sometimes that's the most valuable lesson of all. After 5 years of caring for my paralyzed wife, I overheard her call me a free servant, so I became a free man instead. And that made all the difference.